Hi, my name is Blaine Shocker. I'm with Headwind Solutions, home of the Shocker Pass. I'd just like to take this opportunity to show you some of the different options that we have available. I would like to start out with our rev limiter boxes. We have our generator rev limiter, and these are all color coded, so you can tell which one is which. So silver is the color for our Gen N rev limiter. Then we have our standard R5 box, which works with speed sensors and crank and cam position sensors, which is gold colored. Then we have our yellow box, which is our OBD2 box. This is good for like Dodge, Ford, Chev applications. Then we have our CAN bus module, R5 box, which is good for large pieces of equipment and highway tractors. Then we have a selection of our different positive air shutoff valves. This is just a small glimpse into the amount of different applications that we have. We have all the way from 1.5" up to 7" in manual resets. We also have a wide variety of automatic resetting valves. Then we have here a wide variety as well for different sizes and shapes of speed sensors that we offer, as well as different lengths of our wiring harness. We have these available from 6 foot, 9 foot, 15 foot, all the way up to 25 foot available. These are our test pads. These can be used with automatic reset units instead of using a switch. It gives you basically in-cab control of test and the trip function. Then we also have our Instabeats here. Okay, so we're at the part of the installation now where we're going to start installing our valve. So for the ISX Cummins, we have these really nice adapters that take the place of the factory elbow here. So I'm going to go ahead, take the factory elbow out, install our adapter, then our valve bolts directly to our adapter. Then we will move on to the next step. We took the factory elbow out, then we put our coupler in place and bolted the valve directly to our coupler. Then we had to take and cut 2 inches out of the factory hose here, then reattach it onto the valve. Now when you get that done, you're going to find that there'll be just a slight little bit of a pucker in the hose up in here, so it's going to kind of end up looking like that. What I did to remedy that was I just loosened off the hose here, gave it just the slightest little twist, and that straightened it all right out. Now everything looks perfect just the way it's supposed to be. At this time I also installed our reset sticker right here, and I recommend doing that on all your installations. If you're using a manual reset valve, put the reset sticker that is supplied in the kit as close to the valve as possible so that the operator knows that is how you reset the valve. Okay, so now you have the valve is installed and that's all buttoned up. Now it's time to move on to the rest of the installation. So now you need to find a good spot to mount your R5 rev limiter box. Okay, so for where we're going to put ours, we're going to put ours on the firewall here. It's in a nice clean spot. It's easy to get access to it so that we can do testing and for setting the unit up. It's going to be out of road debris. It's just a nice, clean, tidy spot. There's not excessive engine heat anywhere near it, and these are all very important things. Then we got to run our wiring harness. So this is the time when you need to decide where you're going to get your power and your ground from. We always recommend that you get power from the battery and run all your grounds to the battery as well. We're also going to be using a speed sensor on this unit, so we're going to get the wires ran underneath, and then we'll show you actually how to install the speed sensor. And we're going to be installing our circuit breaker. I like to keep these as close to the power connection as possible inside the battery box. And then we'll be mounting our switch in the cab. Okay, so we went ahead and mounted our switch. Now what you want to be looking for is you want to make sure that it's very nice and easily accessible for the operator. You don't want the operator to have to be fumbling around to find the activation switch when he needs to be doing random testing. So anywhere down in here would be good. In here, there was a factory switch point here that we were able to make work to mount our switch. So that's where we mounted it, just so it's a nice, clean, simple installation. So all you gotta do is flip up the switch guard, hit the switch. You could hear the valve tripping. Then you just have to close the switch guard. Then you have to go out and reset the valve. Now that's with our manual reset valves. We also offer full auto reset, which after you've activated like that, after 15 seconds, it'll actually reset itself. Okay, so now we're underneath the truck. We're getting ready to install our speed sensor. So what you're looking at here, this is the bell housing. This is your engine, your bell housing, then your transmission. So what we're looking to do here is thread our speed sensor into this hole here so that it can pick up the teeth as they travel by that are on the flywheel. Now, we are very lucky. We already have a threaded hole on our bell housing. If you do not have that option, you can drill and tap a hole. If your bell housing is thick enough to do so, then you can thread into the hole that you've drilled and tapped. Or if you have, on some applications, we have special plates that can be used. For instance, on the 60 series Detroit, we have a bolt-on plate that bolts in and then provides a hole. Now, if none of those solutions are going to work out for you, and if your truck is new enough, or the piece of equipment that you are working on is new enough, you can go to our CAN bus unit, and basically what that allows you to do is take your signal directly from the vehicle's PCM, and that location can be found either in the cab of the unit or underneath the hood. So what we're going to do is, we've established that we have our hole. We're lined up dead center on a flywheel tooth when I look through the hole right now. So we're going to take our speed sensor, we're going to thread it in all the way until our speed sensor contacts the tooth on the flywheel. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So there, it's bottomed out. I can feel that it's bottomed out. So now to set this, we need to back this out 3/4 of a turn. Then we're going to lock down our jam nut. So this is half a turn, then another 1/4 turn. Now you want to hold the speed sensor so it can't turn, and then tighten up your jam nut. Let's grab a crisp wrench here. And then that's installed. Then you just have to hook up your connections. Your yellow is the speed signal, and then you need to have a ground as well for this that needs to run directly to the battery. We mounted our R5 box here on the firewall. Then we ran our wiring harness. So we have one set of wires ran into the cab for the switch, and then we have our other wires are ran down to the speed sensor. Then we got another set out of the harness, ran of course right to the battery. Our power and all of our grounds are ran there. Then the last set of wires comes up to the valve. So now it's nice and easy for when we go to do the setup on this unit. I'm going to show you, the set button is on the back of the box, and for testing is nice and easy on the front of the box. At this time, because when we get to the setup portion of this installation, we are also going to do a work mode demonstration just so that we can explain it. So this is just an auxiliary switch that we have wired in just for that purpose, and I will explain more when we get to the setup portion of the installation. Okay, so now you have your valves installed, your R5 box is installed, the switch is installed, and you have your speed signal acquired. In our instance, we were able to use a speed sensor underneath. So now it's time to hook up your battery connections. So as we keep saying, you need to run all your battery power and grounds directly to the battery. So the reason we're saying that is sometimes we'll get a technical call where someone is having trouble getting the unit to set up, for instance, or it's having random shutdowns. 99% of the time, it's due to poor quality connections, high resistance in the ground, or voltage drops. And it'll be the switch ground was grounded to some old rusty screw in the dash, or it was loose, or what have you. If you run all your connections directly to the battery, as we have here, all of our grounds are tied into this ground, which goes straight to the battery ground. Then we have our circuit breaker, which is ran directly to the battery positive. As long as you follow those simple steps, and it doesn't really take any more time to do things right, you won't have any trouble with maintenance or setup of your unit. Okay, so now we're at the setup portion of our installation. Everything else is done. We're just now to the point where we need to set our target RPM. So on our box, you have a test button on the front, and there's a set button on the back. So to put our unit into setup mode, before you even start the engine, you're going to want to hit the set button one time. Then you're going to have a green LED light that's going to be lit. That is telling you that it is ready to accept your signal. Then we're going to start the engine, and on this unit specifically, we've determined that our red line is 2,500 RPM. We always want to go just a little bit over that, so that just in case you're going downhill, you got a heavy load behind you and the RPM spikes, this thing doesn't shut down on you going down the highway. So we're going to set our kill speed for 2,600 RPM, but when we are in set mode, we are able to do that at half of that. So you don't have to rev the engine so high just to do a setup. So we only need to rev our engine to 1,300 RPM. Then, once my assistant has achieved 1,300 RPM, what you're going to see me do is I'm going to hit the set button again. Then our green light is going to flash 3 times. And what that is telling you is that it accepted our target RPM and now it's ready to be tested. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit our test button. Then this light is going to indicate red. Then when he revs it up, once it sees that 1,300 RPM, it is going to command the valve to shut, killing the engine. Then after 15 seconds, this will stop flashing red. That is telling you that you are able to reset the valve and restart the engine. Now remember, that is our test RPM is going to be at 1,300 RPM, but in a real world runaway situation, it actually will not kill till 2,600 RPM, which is 100 RPM over the red line. So now we're actually going to perform our setup. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the set button. So now it's ready to accept our signal. So please go ahead, start it, bring it up to 1,300 RPM. Perfectly. Okay, so now we've set up our variable RPM setting, which was our half speed set at 1,300 and our kill speed at 2,600. Now, for some customers, they are going to require what is called a work mode setup as well, which is basically a second RPM range that can shut down our positive air shutoff. So that is when you have your PTO engaged. So let's say that your work mode RPM, so when PTO is engaged, is your operating RPM is, let's say, 1,400 RPM. So you're going to want it to kill at maybe just like 100 or 200 RPM over top of that. So let's say 1,600. So when we go into work mode, we're going to set it so our half speed of that is 800, so which would then kill the engine at 1,600. So all you need to do to activate your work mode is to ground out the brown wire. Now that can be accomplished by wiring it in on the PTO switch, as long as it pulls to ground. Or you can use, if it's only hot, like say your PTO light, you could use that PTO light to trigger a 5-pin relay to also pull the brown wire to ground. There's several different options for pulling that to ground when PTO is activated. So what we're going to do is we are going to use this as our simulation for engaging our PTO, which as soon as this is engaged, that puts us into work mode in our box. So I'm going to set this by applying it, turning the switch on, that pulls the brown to ground. Then I can go into set mode on our box, which then allows us to set our target RPM for 800. Then we will perform a test on that. Okay, so now that we've gone through how to set that up, we're actually going to go ahead and set up work mode. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to have my assistant start the truck in a second here. Then I'm going to activate our PTO, which we're just simulating that by using this switch. Then I'm going to hit set on the back of our box. Then he's going to bring it up to 800 RPM. I'm going to hit set again, that will save that RPM, but you have to remember that in a real world scenario, if your PTO is running and it goes into a runaway condition, it's actually not going to kill until it hits 1600. PTO is engaged. I hit set. Go ahead and take it up. And down. And it's perfect. Okay, so now that we've done our work mode setup, we've done our baseline setup, now we want to test and make sure that both of those have been saved. So our PTO is off for this test because we're going to test just our normal operating RPM shutdown. So I'm going to get my assistant here to start it. I'll hit test and it should kill at 1300 RPM, which is real world scenario of 2600. Saved that perfect. So we confirmed that our baseline setting was stored and saved and it operated properly. Now we are going to retest our work mode setup. So I'm going to have my assistant start it. I'm going to activate the PTO, then hit the test button, bring it up to 800 RPM, which is real world scenario of 1600 RPM. Go ahead. Also operated perfectly. Okay, so you've completed the installation of your shocker pass positive air shutoff system. In your kit, you would have been supplied with an owner's manual and a little packet of stickers. So what you want to do is make sure that this owner's manual goes with the truck and is given to the operator or is able for him to see it as soon as he gets in the truck. So on the dash or on the seat, just so that he acknowledges and realizes that there is a positive air shutoff system on here. Inside is all the information that he needs to know about keeping it clean, periodically testing it, and making sure that all the functions are the way they need to be. As well, we also send some decals with. This one is the reset decal that you should put as close to the valve as possible. These other ones were just two different sizes of the same thing, just saying that it is protected by the shocker pass positive air shutoff system. Recommend putting these on a door or on a window so that when the operator is taking this into sites or if it's on any kind of a piece of equipment, as soon as they walk up to it, they can see that this unit is protected by the shocker pass positive air shutoff system. Okay, so you own a piece of equipment that has a shocker pass positive air shutoff system on it. The things you need to know is you need to keep it clean. You need to periodically test this unit. You cannot over test it. If you have work mode and your base mode settings are in there, you need to be testing for both of those periodically. And as well as your manual trip of the valve, just by hitting the switch, just to make sure that you're constantly cycling it, you know, every few days, every day, once a week, once a month. But you need to be ensuring that that unit is functioning at all times. You have to remember this is safety equipment and it has to be treated as such.